Welcome back to season 3 of Tea Time with Talent Acquisition, and what an episode we've got to kick off this new season. Featuring the award-winning talent acquisition partner at PVcase, Benas is going to take us through his perception of AI within the recruitment space. Here is what you've got coming up.
Yeah, so first and foremost, I'd like to start off saying that I'm not some tinfoil hat wearing Luddite. I acknowledge that there are many use cases and success stories where implementing AI and overall, it's done great stuff. It's brought great value to teams and everything. My point is more that AI still has lots of drawbacks, lots of unexplored potential issues, and just, generally there's a lot to take into consideration before it can be used the way that the vision goes. So naturally, my rationale will be that if you implement tools, you have to be very careful of which ones you choose. There's lots of considerations, and just generally, whilst I do see that AI will probably get there in the future, I still think that we've got a long way to go before, it's really there as that partner that we want in our workflows. So there's a lot of data security risks that can be there. There's probably even risks in companies that are compliant that we don't know of. But yeah, naturally, with those tools, it can cause info leaks about very sensitive information of your candidates, of your team, of anything else. And, at the end of the day, that's not something you want to happen. We've had so many big data leakage issues in the startup and tech world in recent years. And you never want to see your company's name on one of those articles at the end of the day.
As you can see with AI in the headlines, in the news, it's not all it seems in some cases. We've got some people who are for it, we've got some people who are against it, and we've got some people who just land in the middle and need a little bit more information. Hopefully, this podcast is going to give you more of that information. And Benas is going to explore the specific areas in which we need to be mindful of regarding how AI is going to impact our processes, looking at how risk, security, GDPR, bias, and the candidate experience are all going to have heavily impacted situations due to reliance on AI. So thank you for once again choosing this podcast and for joining us, and feel free to share it amongst your network. But for now, enjoy the episode. Welcome to Tea Time with Talent Acquisition, the podcast aimed at fostering knowledge and sharing stories within the vibrant talent acquisition community. I'm your host, Eden, and for the next hour or so, I'm going to be joined by an experienced talent acquisition specialist who previously led full-cycle international recruitment, scaling a data visualization organization from 50 to over 100 in less than a year. Now he's part of a growing solar technology platform, taking all of his learns and applying it to the new industry. I personally love his down-to-earth approach, and I'm thrilled to have him involved in this podcast. So when you're ready, grab your favorite tea or coffee if you prefer, and join me in welcoming today's guest, talent acquisition partner from the team at PVcase, Benas. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, Eden. It's good to be here.
Nice. Well, look, what I want to do is, especially, and I'm going to have to tell everyone on this one because you just said it a second ago, it's your first podcast. We're going to ease you in quite nicely to this one. So I want to start off with the same question everyone gets in each series that we run. So you're the first in this series. So welcome to season 3 as well. So you're going to be the first person to answer this question. So what is the biggest struggle you believe talent acquisition teams are going to face in 2024?
I think it's going to be more of the same. It's just finding the quality people that fall within salary expectations, are in the right location, and filling those hard to fill roles. So this can go from engineering to high level leadership to just about anything. So I think from my perspective, this has been the main challenge for the past few years, and I think it overall will remain so.
So getting the quality led leads into the top of the funnel, filtering them through that are really aligning with what the company's looking for.
Yeah, exactly. Because, I think even especially looking at where my current company is now, going from that startup to a scale up situation, you're starting to get those roles where hiring managers will need like people with like 7, 8 years of experience in B2B SaaS previously, fluent in English. If they speak French and German, by the way, even better, So you start looking at these requirements and you're
The
like,
really niche ones.
yeah. So, and I'm starting to see that, these roles, at first it was like every now and again, and now it's like almost every second role that we almost get a requisition for. So, yeah, it's getting tougher. Requirements are getting definitely up there, and it's going to be an exciting year to get over that.
Yeah, I actually, to be fair, tomorrow, so not when this is going live, but tomorrow, as in January, when we're recording, I'm posting the 2024 predictions from my own perception. And actually, what you've just shared there, sorry, it's pretty much what I expect, especially the first 6 months of this year as well. You know, unless you're working for a large corporate company, have multiple hires in the same thing, I think candidates need to be mindful and talent teams need to be mindful that it's going to be very unique requirements. And, we're going to be splitting hairs with some candidates. Skills are going to match technical and soft skills. So then we're going to be looking for what's the difference between them at that point. I'm going to ask you at the end of the year how it went and see how it goes. But the focus we're going to talk about today is quite an interesting topic. So artificial intelligence within recruitment, but you've got a different take on it, right? So I mean, anyone who's clicked this is going to see the title. They're going to see kind of what the take is. But what's your personal take on AI within our field?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I'd like to start off saying that I'm not some tinfoil hat wearing Luddite. I acknowledge that there are many use cases and success stories where implementing AI and overall, it's done great stuff. It's brought great value to teams and everything. My point is more that AI still has lots of drawbacks, lots of unexplored potential issues, and just, generally there's a lot to take into consideration before it can be used the way that the vision goes. Because now
Yeah,
I see like a lot of narratives saying like this is the silver bullet, this is gonna fix X, Y, and Z. And then you try to test out those tools that are there and supposed to do that X, Y, Z, and you see that, they still cover like maybe 20-30% of what a human recruiter can do. So naturally, like my rationale will be that if you implement tools, you have to be very careful of which ones you choose. There's lots of considerations, and just generally, whilst I do see that AI will probably get there in the future, I still think that we've got a long way to go before it's really there as that partner that we want in our workflows.
next 2-3 years, we've still got a job, right? From your
Oh
predictions.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm hoping so. I'm hoping so. I mean, like even without AI, working in tech, um, it's an achievement to have a job in the first place nowadays. But with
that's
AI,
true.
yeah, talent acquisition teams are sweating more than they could in some cases, I think.
I think it's quite interesting because I put out a podcast not too long ago about how teams should be leaning into AI. And the perspective that the lady Virginia who shared on it, I was sitting there thinking, actually, you know what, that's a really good point. And then we went through the preparation for this together, and I came out thinking, oh my God, I've just had a complete 180. I'm like, actually, what you're sharing is, and so I've taken it upon myself to explore it further, anyways. Um, but I think both conversations are valid and need to be had because I think you're absolutely right. It's not that it's not useful. It's just we need to be mindful of it. So why, from your perspective, that mindfulness, why does it need to happen?
Yeah. Okay, so there's a few main themes that I want to cover today, but I guess I'll start off with like the shortest ones, and then we'll work our way over. So my first kind of point is data protection. So especially
Okay.
in the EU, since GDPR became a thing and made our jobs and lives 10 times harder, um, you know, that's the thing. All teams need to adhere to GDPR. Like you can get away with cutting some corners if you're in a small startup, something really early stage, because no one's really paying attention to that yet. But as organizations grow, then so will the basically like the magnifying glass that you're under. Audits will start and everything like that, and it's so important to position yourself well for when that happens, and better to do it
Yeah.
sooner rather than later. So many of the tools right now, or AI tools, and even recruitment tools overall, like they are not GDPR compliant. So that naturally, if you have it in your tech stack and then auditors come in, you're not going to enjoy what's going to happen next, I think, in life. So that's one thing that, when choosing out an AI tool, if you've really made that commitment that you want to go for it, just make sure if you have a legal team, even better, they can help you double check it. But yeah, there's one thing you really need to do is just double check that it's compliant with all the
Yeah, need
necessary
to check the
laws.
validity of this actually doing what it says. If it says we're GDPR compliant, are you? And put it to the test. I think ask the team to show the documentation or to show how are you GDPR compliant.
Yep. Exactly. And then there's the second part of it, which is ISO compliance. So this is more relevant for like the larger enterprise companies or startups that have have products that aim at enterprise level companies. So ISO compliance becomes really important. But yeah, also lots and lots of tools are not ISO compliant. So that's going to cause a lot of issues down the line as well if you bring that on board. So and
How,
that's
if you don't mind me asking, sorry, how does it? How does an AI tool compromise that data? Like,
so
why is it an issue?
yeah. So I'm not really that much of an expert in going that in depth, but there are a few things that basically, like how our AI is trained. They take data from previous places, and that's how they
Mhm.
like build their models and algorithms, which is going to be another problematic area I'll talk about later on. But there is the other thing that what was it? AI, it takes on the info that is being processed. So it could be like candidate info in your ATS, it could be candidate data in LinkedIn, stuff like that. And then, if it's not compliant with these laws, then that naturally means that there's the question, okay, where's this data being stored? Who
Mm,
has access to it? Um, do any other third parties do they have the availability to actually get their hands on it? Maybe if there's any kind of leak. So there's a lot of data security risks that can be there. There's probably even risks in companies that are compliant that we don't know of. But yeah, naturally, like with those tools, it can cause info leaks about very sensitive information of your candidates, of your team, of anything else. And at the end of the day, that's not something you want to happen. We've had so many big data leakage issues in the startup and tech world in recent years, and you never want to see your company's name on one of those
mm.
articles at the end of the day.
Being banished off LinkedIn and all the hate mail coming in. It's interesting on that topic. I know obviously not experts in the field of the technology side, but it is interesting because I see a lot of AI tools coming up for just mostly data scraping tools, slapped with the word AI on there, rebranded, resold. And there's a few on there. I won't name them because I do use them, but I've used them, right?
Yeah.
And now you're talking about, I'm thinking, sitting there thinking, you're absolutely right. Where does the data sit? So the data sits on LinkedIn and it's scraped through this tool to gather that data. Providing that company doesn't store the data, in theory, GDPR is still relevant because it's stored on LinkedIn. But if they store that data, then that's the issue, right? They're
Yep.
storing data that they're not allowed to officially hold because the person has not given them consent. It's interesting.
Yeah. And that's another thing, like talking about, you mentioned being kicked off LinkedIn and like these particular LinkedIn tools. That's another thing like we really explored at PVcase. It seemed like a great idea on paper, then we started looking into it, and then like we realized like pretty much none of these tools is compliant with LinkedIn's policies internally as well. So you need to be either running them when you're not normally online, so like after work hours to do like the sourcing for you. And then there's other kind of issues as well. So it's another thing. I would never want to use a tool that puts my LinkedIn account at risk
Mm.
because LinkedIn's our bread and butter. Like it has us hostage. Like we recruiters cannot live without LinkedIn at this point unless you're in some
It does
very
produce
niche.
a large portion of the market, to be fair. I mean, it has a monopoly. You can't argue against it. We have other tools at our disposal, but none are as effective. You might
Yeah,
make the odd placements here or there, but the vast majority come from your
yeah,
network.
yeah,
On
100%. So like you never want to lose your account at the end of the day.
on the tools, by the way, I have an account manager from LinkedIn. So we actually only spoke about this last week, so it's timing. they have a list of over 100 tools which they're actively trying to block from their platform. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know what all the tools are. He wouldn't share them. Otherwise, I definitely would put this into the footnotes. But if anyone listening has a recruiter license, if you have an account manager, you want to implement a tool, you can ask your account manager. They will check that list and they will tell you it's safe or it's not safe. So there are several tools, especially where they're like high priority, get the hell off our platform. And obviously, if you're caught using that multiple times, then that's where your account can become blocked.
Do they have like a list of tools that are available to be used on
No,
LinkedIn and don't breach them? Ah, of course not.
no, no, no. They
Convenient.
don't make they don't make it as easy as that. I did ask for that as well. To be fair, we're it's the same boat as internal external. You need to look for ways. How can we streamline? How can we be more efficient? Is AI really the answer to it or not? And that was just the discussion I was having with him. But yeah, if anyone's unsure, then the easiest thing is just to approach your account manager and ask. And if they don't know, then you can always message me because our guy comes out in like 24 hours top. So Joe's got a lot more work to do by the sounds of it. So having that, the GDPR, the security breaches, obviously it's a big no-no for any company. We don't want to have that. But you mentioned there's other areas as well. So where else would we be looking into as
Yeah.
potential issues around AI?
Yeah, so I think like another thing is of course the whole decision making aspect of it and like speeding up the hiring process. Because naturally, like some of the biggest arguments for using AI in recruitment is, like it'll chop down the time to write stuff up. It'll chop down the time to like screen candidates.
Mm.
Like basically some platforms claim to be able to do like all the initial screening for you, and then you can just book yourself interviews. But there's so many like aspects that go into it. So and one thing is, once again, like tying back to what I mentioned, so AI algorithms learn from like historical data,
Yeah.
and naturally, a lot of the historical data you'll have, it'll have some flaws. So, like for example, it can have inherent biases from previous times. Where, so another thing I forgot to mention is like that, AI tools can sometimes not actually help reduce biases, but yeah. So if it learns from data that contains biases, it will not reduce biases. I think there was like a study in 2018 that saw like a use of some kind of AI tool actually increased biases when compared to a human approach.
Based on
So
historical data that was fed.
yeah, exactly.
Oh wow.
And then so I'm not sure. I didn't check out this study too in depth, so it could be like just a bunch of gas. And I'll be totally open about it.
Just put 2018, right?
Yeah, I think so. But
Let me see if I can quickly
basically,
find it.
yeah, no worries. So
There's one
and
from MIT.
mhm,
I'll try and find it after this and see if I can
yeah,
link to it.
yeah, I think so. But case in point, a lot of time has passed since 2018. Let's be fair. So AI has made miles forward since then.
Mm.
But still, we've got a lot of research that is still not done on this. So naturally, we don't have any accurate data to base our findings on. So that's one thing why it should be, approached with caution, in that kind of aspect. Then, like, I've also noticed that it's great for increasing speed, but only in some particular cases. So let's take MetaView for example. Like it's probably one of the most popular tools now for recruitment from like the AI scene, and I've played
Mhm.
around quite a bit with it. Um, some members of my team actually use it. Well, my
Before
whole
you
team uses
go
it.
through this, explain to someone who has never heard of it what MetaView is.
Yeah, okay. So MetaView is basically an AI transcription tool. So it'll integrate with something like Google Meets. So, for example, if you're doing a candidate interview, you finish the interview, it processes for a few minutes and then sends you a full-on transcript of the call. And then you can also ask its AI questions from the interviews, like what was this candidate's personality, for example, and like questions like that, and it will write that stuff up. So our team onboarded it. I realize I'm actually the only person that doesn't use it anymore. Um, but there's a reason for that. So a fair few people in my team like to stay hands off from typing during interviews because they want to like be fully present in the interview, and all good for them. So in their case, yeah, they've not typed anything out. For them, it saves a lot of time, like writing everything up and then handing it over to a hiring manager, inputting it into the ATS and everything. But in my case, I grew up with video games. I type extremely fast. So I have no issues like being present in a call and then, typing at the same time. So for me, using MetaView when I was testing it out was actually slowing me down than actually like giving me that benefit. So naturally, in use cases such as mine, that will be the drawback. In other cases, yeah, there can be some value to be had. So that's another thing, you got to evaluate, like, is the ability to be like fully present in a call really that necessary for your team? Will it actually drive that value and justify the price of the product? Will it, actually bring you enough value to justify bringing it on the table? So that's another thing that, is really useful to kind of evaluate. So yeah, that aspect of checking out speed and everything, it doesn't always hold up in all
Yeah.
cases.
No, I agree. Just to throw my sense into that part as well. I think automating certain tasks, and we're trying to work out what do we need automated. And when you really boil it down, 3 or 4 tasks, because the rest of it for sales, right? And you can't automate the sales process. You have to build, and okay, you can in some products, but we're dealing with products, quote unquote, that are people that have their own, mind, and you can't automate their thinking process for them. You can only hope that you have the best opportunity, you guide, and you just give them everything that they need to make a decision, and they have to make a decision. The MetaView topic, I think it's interesting for somebody who might be new to the world of recruitment, who are maybe struggling to do both typing and listening. I do see a lot of juniors struggle with that. By the way, I'm also from the era of trying to sell gold on RuneScape within a very short window of time. Type in who wants to buy it. So I'm with you on there. I can type super quick, but I do see the value in a product like MetaView as well. And we're not sponsored by them, but if MetaView does want to sponsor us, feel free to reach out. I wouldn't say no. But I think as well it's good because it's completely unedited at that point as well. So like as a hiring manager, you can go in and say, okay, what exactly was covered, what wasn't covered, and you can always track back. The issue in a process always comes down to candidate's not qualified or the job itself isn't qualified. And if both of those two things are recorded in word by word, you can always track back what happened.
Yeah, and that's another thing that's good that you mentioned, because we've just recently had a case where some hiring managers noted that not everything on MetaView and how it logs was accurate. Like some
Oh,
words got
really?
misinterpreted, some
Ah,
sentences
okay.
and
So
meanings fell
basically,
off.
everything I just said there was a load of rubbish.
Not necessarily a load of rubbish, it could be an isolated case or two or everything, but that's what, once again, it's not
Worth
something that
noting.
you can just like copy paste throw it on and
Hmm.
job's done. You'll still need to like clean it up. And
Yeah.
I also found like it has such a dry formal speech on how it logs everything that I just, want to delete everything and rewrite it in my words again just for user friendliness as well. So that's another little thing to note.
How do you think AI is going to impact the big question, which is candidate experience? And candidate experience, I think, is rightfully so, by the way, the big topic right now. I think it deserves the limelight and attention because 2023, if it's taught us anything, is the vast majority of companies are terrible running candidate experiences. Just say how it is. I mean,
Yeah.
let's be honest. So bringing in AI, what do you think the implications are going to be on
Yeah.
that? Good on bad.
So I think it really depends on what kind of company it is. Like for the companies that you mentioned, that have like generally not great candidate experience, like for them, I don't think it will have many drawbacks, because if your candidate experience is already not great, then AI won't make it worse, I imagine. So I would imagine it could actually have the point of increasing the candidate experience rather than like being a drawback. Um, Whereas, for companies that have great candidate experience, what creates great candidate experience at the end of the day is a recruiter that really knows how to do the thing, and the hiring management team that is also equally as invested into making sure that the hiring process is enjoyable for everyone and such. So I think, for the places that have great candidate experience, I doubt AI will be able to elevate that. Whereas, for the companies that struggle with it, it could definitely have some positive notes. I've literally just read a study before this podcast that, like literally happened this year, that candidates were being like interviewed and questioned, like how do they perceive use of AI in that, like hiring process. And I was surprised,
Mm.
but a lot of people answered positively. My expectation
Oh,
was that,
really?
yeah, I was very surprised because I anticipated people would be, negative about it. It's like,
What was
I'm
the
being
involvement of AI though in that study? Was it just like scheduling? Was it chatbots? Was it
I think it was
interviewers?
I think it was all of them. I think it was a fairly broad questionnaire. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, I think it was covering a pretty broad range of questions. So going from like, the initial screening, the CV monitoring, to the, like interview arrangements and such.
Yeah,
But naturally, this is like a questionnaire from people on how they imagine it. So
right.
how people imagine it on a questionnaire, is not going to necessarily
Um,
realistically represent how it's going to be in reality.
Well, you're hoping that that one company had everything nailed down. AI tools are perfect, the process is perfect. The reality is they might have one tool that's implemented okay, and then the rest of it's just not.
I mean, it could be, you never know how it's going to go. I think, some companies will be very great with it, some companies won't be, some companies, will see the benefits and some won't. So I think, in a topic such as this, it's very difficult to establish like a singular way that
Yeah.
applies to every single context,
I think we're still a little bit too early for all of that anyways. And that's why I quite like this discussion of do we go AI, do we not go AI, and how does it ultimately look? There's no right or wrong answer in anything. It's about being mindful and cautious of, don't just jump in feet first and not really paying attention. The candidate experience part, do you think that the more adoption of AI is going to lead to a disconnect between
Uh,
company and candidate?
I mean, I would imagine so, to be honest. Because like I think like how our current workflow is set up is a great example. At PVcase, like we use a very like human first approach. So we've got a decent sized TA team of like 11 people, I think, in total. Part of which
Mhm.
is talent sources and then TA partners. And we have people facing candidates at every single step of the hiring process. So you'll have the sources doing the initial engagement. They'll sometimes even do like a quick phone screening call just to like get the main kind of bits out of the way. Then like the TA partners take over, and we take them up to the point where they tell us yes, they want to join.
Mhm.
And we obviously like always ask for feedback after a candidate is hired. Like how was the whole process went, and it's absolutely in the top of the greens. Like everyone's really happy on how the communication is handled, how everything is done, and everything. And then I imagine, if we put AI into some of those steps, like there's no guarantee it will, take it downwards. But I do kind of really, I feel quite confident theorizing, it'll lose a lot of that human factor. And I mean,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, this is what recruitment is. It's people. It's a very human approach requiring role, because there are so many nuances that AI will never be able to cover, like detecting sarcasm, diving deeper into like a candidate's motivations. Actually, whilst we're on this, I just remembered another thing about MetaView. I noticed it logged and reported candidates a lot more positively than I did. And I already consider myself a very positive and lenient judge when it comes to like that, initial screening. So that's
Is
yet
that,
another
do you
kind of
think that's
thing.
because you know the criteria better than, like, for example, you know your hiring manager, you can read a job description, but you know the subtleties that that person does need, that just they're to do with the shape of the team, they're to do with maybe skills that are missing from the team that maybe a job description just it doesn't always say.
Not even necessarily to that level. I would say it's more so like missing a few nuances because a person can like go on a huge ramble that has many disconnects and like just misses the point a lot. But to the AI, like they're talking, they're answering the question. Fair enough, fair play. Let's continue. So it
It's a
doesn't
great
like
point. So, yeah, it's not determining
give you
whether
negative
yeah,
points.
not determining whether or not somebody is like to the point, structuring their answer. If it's saying it, they're talking, they're giving us information. It's a big green tick.
Yep. No, 100%.
Mm.
So yeah, and like tying back, so I can definitely see some disconnects that can happen. I can definitely see like some of them drawbacks that go. So yeah, there's just loads of risk factors. Maybe down the line, once AI is perfected and it passes the Turing test and it gets properly cracking on, yeah, maybe we'll have to change careers. Like maybe that'll be that. But I think there's
Who
still
knows?
many years. I think what's most likely going to happen is that many years will still pass before this becomes like a real kind of thing for us. And then eventually it's going to be something like I read when ChatGPT came out, and then all the copywriters were like, oh God, that's it for us. And realistically, one person on LinkedIn, I don't remember who it was, just said it like that. It's like, yeah, it's the end for copywriters that don't know how to use the tool properly. Those that will adapt to the market, that will learn to use it properly, they will prosper. And I think the same is going to happen with recruiters.
Yeah,
But for now, the tools aren't there yet, so that you can actually do it. Like there is some value, but that's like my position. Why in my context it doesn't really, it hasn't come up to the or lived up to the hype, basically.
yeah. And I think I'm with you on the sense of those who can use the tools will get the step ahead. But you're right, the tools just aren't. They're not there properly. They're not there in abundance either. We're saying Meta, but a lot of people know about that one. There's tools that are being created, but I'm yet to see for any of the conferences I've been to that I sit there and go, wow, that is a game changer. They're all just they're all just the same, just slight different interface. And like even for example, LinkedIn added AI into their emailing system. And it's terrible. I don't know if you used it yet.
No, I actually haven't. So what is that?
Yeah, so like I found you on LinkedIn Recruiter. I'll click generate message with AI, and it'll basically draw in a message based on your profile, and it'll say like, "Hi, I've seen that you're working for PVcase for X amount of years, blah blah blah." Right, and in theory, great. In practice,
Yeah,
you can tell within two messages that it's a copy paste one. So, I mean,
yeah,
it doesn't really work. I put a poll up about it and said, like, would you respond to somebody who done this? And like resounding like 80-85% was like, no. So clearly it's a
yeah.
tool that AI, it's an AI tool that people just aren't, they don't want. And companies are just trying to throw it down you. So let me bash on LinkedIn a bit now. Sorry. Uh, the other side of
Yeah,
things
we
is,
can't bite the hand that feeds at this point.
no, sorry, if LinkedIn, if you are listening, I apologize as well. Uh, do you do you have any examples of where, and again, I'm coming back to the fact that you're not a tinfoil wearing recruiter, so you're kind of approaching AI with a level of caution, but not against it. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting from this, is that it's not all bad, but it's not at the level you're thinking about it yet. Do we need to jump in it full throttle? Probably not. Do you see any examples where maybe it is going to really drastically benefit us? Where you can see things coming through, or maybe areas in our process as recruiters that you can see it really helping.
I mean, obviously, so down the line, if we can find like a sourcing tool that is compliant, that actually, manages to like automate the candidate search, or at least, like nail down the best profiles and everything, that could be big. Um, any kind of candidate CV screening tools, once they work out and, we're sure that, they're just as good as humans, if not better, you know, that basically, that will bring a lot of value. Just chop down an enormous amount of time, especially when you have those positions that have like 1,000+ applicants.
Yeah.
Um, And so we'll definitely have those things. I don't think AI will ever really impact like the end of the recruitment funnel. So, like all the negotiations, the offering stage. I sincerely doubt that it could genuinely, like ever replace people on that. Subject to me being proven wrong, of course.
If you
But
imagine you get a job offer and like a CTO and you're negotiating with a chatbot,
mate, I would
like,
so
that would be
love to see that.
ridiculous. I mean, not even a CTO, like a software engineer in general or a marketer, like that would be mental. If someone's thinking about creating that tool, please stop. Stop. I feel like that doesn't need to be created.
I mean, but if it does, it's going to be terrible for a while, and then the companies that don't use it will have an advantage versus the companies that do use it. So, as a person that
Mm,
will hopefully be in a company that doesn't use it, I'll take
there
any
you go.
advantage I can get.
Take the positives while you can.
I mean, that's life. That's the best way to approach it.
No, but I think, by the way, I know I keep kind of coming back to the fact you wear tinfoil hats or don't wear tinfoil hats in this one. Um, I really appreciate your perspective on it. So I find with talent acquisition, we kind of fall into two categories. Those who are scared of saying something out in public and those who do say stuff in public. And a lot of us fall into, we don't want to say something out in public because we're fearful of being wrong or whatever. And to kind of go against where a large portion of the industry is sitting there saying we should be going down the AI route and to come and say, whoa, take a step back. Like, I think it is needed. And I think some teams will find that actually, you know what, going with AI, it worked perfect for us. And other teams, in your case, it hasn't really, with yourself not using the tool. I think it's about kind of being mindful. I think that's the biggest takeaway of this one.
Yeah, of course. Like I think it's not just the AI thing, like any tools, anything, like you have to be mindful of what works, what doesn't, and properly evaluate it, because only then,
Mm.
you're going to be able to establish if this is something that, will actually benefit you or, come back to bite you in the end at some point. So this goes beyond from AI to a full-on life lesson, evaluate everything, be mindful.
That is true. There's actually, to be fair, there's a conversation that's in season one. And I will link to this when we post it. It's a lady from a company called Opera Digital, and she runs a talent team there. And she basically spoke about the validity of tools. And it's a really, really interesting conversation because you shouldn't just blindly accept a company comes in and says, "Hey, by the way, we can run your entire screening process, and this is the cost, and this is your result." And she's saying, "Well, you should validate and say, look, okay, show me the data. If it is what you say it is, I need to see." And you should do that for every service provider. You should do it for every tool, AI, non-AI, recruiter, internal, external. You should always be sitting and say, validate your proposition with data. Um, we'll end it on there, Benas, but thank you so much for jumping in and kind of helping with this. But I appreciate you taking the time. But hopefully, there's things to be taken away from those listening. So thank you for joining.
Oh, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you for bringing me on to the first podcast of my life. It was really enjoyable, man.
Hopefully not the last. You've done well. You've done
Hopefully.
well.
Thank you.
I mean, I'll
Thank
let
you,
the
sir.
audience decide that one, right? So if we get the listeners, we'll know you've done well. But I appreciate it. But thank you so much.
Cheers, man.